Good afternoon, scaredy cats. Hope you enjoy the video today and please like, comment, and subscribe. Ghost wants to come in? This is entirely real and has still shocked me to this very day. This might be a bit short, but it really happened. I need to explain a few things before I can continue to the real ghost encounter. My house is a bit echoey, and I'm able to hear anyone moving up and down the stairs from my room. I can also see their shadow underneath the door when they approach it. Anyway, I think it was around 7 to 8 o'clock p.m. I know it was nighttime. I was on my iPad just Google searching a few things. I have forgotten because I never got to write my experience down, so this is from memory. I heard my mom come down and go to her room because our rooms are in the basement. So after she went back upstairs, I was alone for a few minutes. Or so I thought. Not very long from when I heard my mother's footsteps go upstairs, I heard a loud knocking on the wooden door I have. It was knocking, smacking the door multiple times. I saw no shadow and I only heard the loud knocking. I was afraid to go out there, so I waited. I heard no footsteps either, which I expected to hear if it was anyone messing with me, but the only people in my house is me and my parents were too busy watching a movie. I finally went out the door, no one was there. It may sound cliched, but it's what happened. The rooms were closed and dark, indicating that no one was in them or someone was asleep, but I heard no snoring. I asked when I got upstairs if anyone knocked on my door and my parents both said no. I am being very serious. I want to know what that was and why it happened. Anyone have any ideas? It's still creeping me out. Ceiling that dripped blood. One time when I was young, me and my cousin were visiting my great-grandparents in Pike County, KY. My great-grandparents live in an old 2-story house that to me looks a little creepy. Anyway, while we were all eating dinner, my great-grandpa told us about how many years ago, when they first bought the house, they had some paranormal experiences. For example, when my great-grandma was unpacking, she saw someone move across the room with the corner of her eye. She thought that it was my great-grandpa, so she called out to him. He didn't answer. My great-grandma got a little worried, and just then, my great-grandpa came through the front door. He was outside the whole time. The strangest thing he told my cousin and me was how one night, the ceiling in their room actually dripped blood. After about 30 minutes it stopped. My great-grandpa told the neighbors about the strange occurrences, and they said that the people that lived in that house before them moved out because they claimed it was haunted. After the story, me and my cousin were kind of spooked. When we were done eating, we went up to the attic. We were just messing around, going through old trunks and looking at really old pictures, when we both heard someone sobbing. My cousin shined her flashlight over to where we heard the sobbing. It was coming from behind an old mirror. I said, "Is anybody there?" hoping I wouldn't get an answer. After a few moments, a figure stepped out from behind the mirror. It was a pale woman with a wedding gown on. Now that I think about it, I don't think she was trying to scare us. But being about 10 years old, my cousin and me wasted no time running out of the attic as fast as we could. It was a very scary moment, and I can't help but wonder if the ghost was trying to tell us something or not. Dead baby in the road. I am 48 years old. I always considered myself a sensitive since a young child. However, the experiences have gotten fewer as I've aged. Perhaps I have become more cynical and stoic in the years, or I am just not as open as I used to be. I don't know, but I have had numerous experiences. Since I just found this site, I will start with a brief one and maybe we'll share the more detailed and scarier ones later. I guess I was about 17. I remember it was early March. It was one of those nights where there was both a light fog and spitting rain. My best friend had his own car, a baby blue Ford Pinto, a putt-putt car at best. If we had money for gas, we would drive around on Friday nights doing nothing in particular but listening to the radio and talking. Occasionally we smoked some pot. We picked up one of our girlfriends who was usually able to get a joint from her older sister, this night being no exception, but I wanted to be known we had not smoked anything before the event. We were not on a dark country road, but a common thoroughfare where there was normal traffic in front and behind us, traveling 35 to 40 miles per hour. Karen sat in the back seat, pretty much still saying her hellos and how are yous. I was in the passenger seat. Jack was a very careful driver, almost always driving too slow. Suddenly in the road ahead was what looked like a baby, half wrapped in a pale pink blanket, blood smeared across its face. I would guess it was about 10 months old. Having come up upon it so suddenly through the vague mist and rain in the road, we simply glided right over it. There were no bumps heard under the car or anything. It happened so quickly. After a few seconds of disbelief, I dared to say, "Did you see that?" After all, maybe it was just me who saw it. Jack was silent. Karen asked, "What? Did you see that in the road?" I repeated. Jack finally croaked, "I'm not even going to say what I think that was." Karen was pressing still. What? What? I didn't see anything. It looked like a dead baby, I said finally. Karen laughed and repeated. What? I told Jack to turn around immediately, but he didn't, and he still didn't concur with me on what that was in the road. He took a long way around up to the main highway and through the back neighborhoods to go back to the original spot. We were only past the site for about 15 minutes total before we returned. I was terribly impatient to get back there, and was annoyed at Jack, who I believe was just too terrified, so he purposely didn't turn around despite my pleading. As we reapproached, I expected to see other cars stopped, an ambulance, anything to prove that we just witnessed a baby dead in the road, as if it had been tossed out a car window or thrown into oncoming traffic from the roadside. There was nothing there. I expected bloodstains, tire marks, people gathered. Nothing. We even went around again, but there was no sign that anything unusual occurred at the spot in the road. I scanned the sides of the road. Nothing, not even a baby blanket. We did smoke the joint, but that just made the experience more heightened in my head at least. The others, I'm not sure, except the next day at school, Jack pretty much dismissed it. It was probably a possum, he said. No, it wasn't. It was distinctly what we saw it was. Besides, if it was a dead opossum, it would still be there dead, worse, flattened. The subject was dropped between us, but I scoured the newspapers for weeks looking for anything that might tell of this accident. I went back there myself. There was never a sign of anything, but I had always wondered about the house just near that spot that sat back from the road, a dirty, unkept place that looked like it was split into several apartments. I think someone once said it was a halfway house for young girls in trouble. But I never checked that out for fact. If it was indeed a murder or an abortion or whatever, certainly someone else would have seen it. There were so many other cars traveling right over it as we did. Maybe by reading this, someone else will come forward. For years as I drove past that point on that same road, I have always wondered. Still do today. Jack and I are still friends, middle-aged men now, yet we have rarely talked about it again until just recently. We recalled the incident, sharing the story with some friends around Halloween time, and we are in complete agreement that what we saw that misty night was a dead baby in the road. Encountering the devil himself. This story takes place about 9 years ago when I was 15 years old. My cousins and I were young and stupid. I say stupid because of the trouble we caused, and decided to dabble in witchcraft. We went all out, going to the store, buying a spell book, candles, an altar, everything. We drew a pentagram on the back of an old mirror and used it as the place where we would cast our spells. Little did we know we drew the pentagram upside down and allowed negative spirits to pass through. After about 3 months of playing with this pentagram, we all started to have occurrences in that house. I would spend the night there every weekend and would wake up in the morning to brush my hair and see a little girl in the mirror behind me. Let me inform you that this house was not haunted prior to our dabbling. My cousin stated she had seen a young man, a little girl, a little boy, and a dog in the mirrors of her house. We never thought anything of it because, hey, old houses are sometimes haunted. We never thought any of them were harmful, so we were not afraid of them. We would sit in her room and end up in the living room listening to her parents talk and never leave her room. After that, we started getting creeped out. My cousin, whom we will call Lynn, would wake up with gouges and scratches on her back only to have them disappear when we would approach someone else about it. These were the minor occurrences. Little did we know things were about to get worse. One night, after getting home late from our friend's house, we came home to an empty house. So, figuring her parents were out, like they sometimes went out for the night, we made nothing of it. The house was freezing cold, like there was no heat coming from anything. Might I mention it was the middle of summer. We knew something was not right. We immediately had a feeling of dread, and not going to lie, we were scared out of our minds. We sat on the porch until her parents came outside and asked what we were doing outside. Her parents were home the whole time. Weird, right? It gets worse. We went in the house and the images we were seeing in the mirrors started showing their true colors. Their eyes were glowing red and they were turning all black. These things were in every mirror in the house. We finally realized with our dabbling we had let a demon into the house and had no idea how we were going to get it out. Her mother just looked at us and asked us, "What did you do?" We then knew we were in over our heads. Well, this went on for 2 months before we figured out a plan. We abandoned all of our stuff only to find it back in the trunk of the car. Next step was to burn it. We burned everything and prayed as we did this. The smoke was so black you could not see through it. We hoped that worked. Well, it did, to the point we closed the porthole demons were entering through, but did not remove them from the house. We then knew we had to get an exorcism at the house. My cousin's house is right next to a cemetery, and we decided we needed to pray. So we went into the chapel and prayed to God for him to help us and told him we were so sorry for what we had done. On our way out, we noticed the 2 angels guarding the doors. We began crying. It scared the crap out of us, but also we felt a sense of calm and knew that everything was okay, or was going to be okay. We went back to the house and my aunt had bought the 3 of used gold crosses to wear and a Bible. We got in touch with a priest who happened to be a friend of my mom's, and he agreed to bless the house. This worked, and we have not had another experience yet, and we are happy as can be. I am more in touch with my faith and will not look back. Entity which almost choked me. It was somewhere in November. I was having a fever, which lasted for a couple of days. Luckily, my fever was almost over. I still had a sweat attack now and then because of my fever. One night, I woke up in bed. I noticed my blanket and pillow were soaking wet. I had a sweat attack again because of this. I decided to go to the attic and sleep in the guest room. I grabbed my phone, took it with me to the attic, set my alarm, and went to sleep in the guest room. After a while, I woke up again. My eyes were still closed, and I could hear my mom making herself ready for her work in the bathroom. I was curious what time it was, so I opened my eyes slowly. I could see the room clearly, because the sun already started to shine. I immediately saw something very disturbing. A black entity was standing right in front of me. I got a lot of thoughts rushing through my head, like, is this really happening? What does this entity want from me? Is this entity going to hurt me? I was very shocked that this entity was standing right in front of me. I wanted to scream, but before I could do that, the entity reached to my throat and was trying to choke me. I could feel an immense force closing the airway in my throat. Because of this, I couldn't scream, no matter how hard I tried. As soon as I noticed that I couldn't scream, I really panicked. The first thought that went into my head was that I needed to stop the entity to choke me. I grabbed the entity's arm with my own arm and tried to remove his hand from my throat. I was already weakened because I couldn't breathe, so I couldn't remove its arm from myself. My vision went darker and darker, and I couldn't hold on to his arm any longer. About 20 minutes later, I woke up again. I remembered everything that happened and thought it was a dream. Not much later, I realized that my right arm was in the exact same position as it was when I tried to remove the entity's arm from my throat. This wasn't my first experience. I've also experienced feeling entities sitting on my bed, doors that are normally locked and were somehow opened while nobody was home, and hearing footsteps in my garden at midnight while I was home alone. I'm guessing this experience isn't sleep paralysis, because I could move my arm. I appreciate your point of view on this story.